One. Welcome, friends. Welcome to another edition of Freeing the Body, Freeing the Soul. I'm your host, Dr. David, the Cutting Edge Doc, and here on Freeing the Body, Freeing the Soul, we do in-depth interviews with individuals that are doing cutting edge work in the areas of healing, spirituality, and social transformation. And I'm very excited about today's show. I will introduce my special guest in a minute, but I want to give a little bit of context for those of you that have been following me. Many of you know that at the beginning of the year, I mentioned that the show was going to shift a little bit in its emphasis. During the couple of years before that, we'd focused a lot on the inner aspects of transformation. And I felt like we had covered that to a critical mass to the point where in 2018, partially because of what we covered so far and also partially because of what I was feeling that the energy of 2018 was going to be about, I let you guys know that we were going to shift a little bit in 2018 and focus more on the cultural aspects, the cultural implications and potential applications of transformation, of living authentically. And then those of you who follow me also know that over the last several months, I have been much more outspoken about the assault from many prongs, which is a real key part of what I call the dark force agenda, to create more problems in the family, create more problems between men and women, create more sexual difficulties, cull the population, create more anxiety, depression, have people die sooner, etc. That a lot of this is being focused on weakening men. And one of the ways that shows up in our world today, and we have hard data on this, is that testosterone levels and sperm counts have dropped precipitously over the last several decades. And so my interest in this area has dovetailed with my own current journey in terms of, those of you know I'm very committed to my own well-being. And I'm 62 years old, and over the last few years, I was feeling like I was, on the inside, I felt fantastic, but it wasn't translating to the kind of vigor that I was used to and that I need for what I'm all about. And, I have prided myself on being very discerning about how I construct my worldview and testing my worldview against reality. And so my worldview for decades has been that, barring genetic abnormalities, that I've basically taken the point of view that good nutrition, proper herbs, essential oils, lifestyle, good chiropractic care, proper attitude, a good spiritual life, that we could handle most things. And what was happening was that there were some things that were going on in me where I was doing all those things and I still wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And I don't drink alcohol, I'm careful about what I eat, etc. And I'm very sensitive to energy. I know my own body, and I had a feeling my testosterone was getting too low no matter what I was doing. And so I had to question my paradigm. And, that's not always easy, but I've come to the conclusion that I have to expand my paradigm to include specific hormonal optimization in terms of my commitment to overall wellness. And so out of my search, I came across people that really know what they're talking about in this field. And one of the people that I came across with is my special guest today. His name is Campbell, and he's extremely knowledgeable about the whole area of hormonal optimization. And in addition to that, he's right in tune with me and my tribe with regard to our worldview about the big picture, about what's happening here and why it's happening, and what we need to do for the light team to stay strong. So with that as a little bit of a context, I'd like to introduce and welcome to Freeing the Body, Freeing the Soul, Campbell. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Doc, thank you so much. I'm humbly honored and privileged to be here today. Very excited to talk to you. And yes, I agree with all of those things clearly. And yes, we definitely are serving the same mission.
Okay, so what I'd like to do to start out with, for a couple of reasons, is I'd like to give you a chance to tell your story. And I do this for two reasons. One is I want my viewers and listeners to be able to emotionally bond and connect with you. And also, I think it gives people a context for when we do start to talk about the work, they can hear it in a little bit of a different way. So let me turn it over to you for a while. And, everybody who gets into a field like this, we're not just born into a society where we're little kids and we want to do this. So there's something that happens in our lives that is a critical event that gets us on this path. So let me turn it over to you for a while. And, this show's going to be, I think, a little bit different than some of the interviews because I want to give Jay a little more freedom also to ask me any questions that come up for him too. So it may turn into more like a conversation, but let's start out with Jay just telling his story. So take it away.
Sure, I appreciate it. So I'll just talk a little bit about like how I've gotten to where I am here today. First off, I am a father. I'm a husband. I have two biological daughters, 10 years old and 8 years old. I also am the father, or bonus father, as my wife likes to call it, to her three biological children, which are Alana, who's 15, Ezra, who's 20, and Evan, who's 22 years old. So we have a very modern familia, as they would say, where we have two marriages, biological children from previous marriages, and we manage all of them here today. And I am currently 47 years old. How I got into what we're talking about today, which is really becoming a leader or subject matter expert in the optimization space, which is more than just testosterone and hormones, but just recommending that people live a lifestyle that allows them to maintain maximum energy, vigor, and enthusiasm for life. My background, I was a college basketball player. I graduated from college. I continued to play sports. I'm from the East Coast. I moved out to California in 1993 upon graduating from college to get into acting and entertainment with my friend. I actually did some work in acting. Time went on, got into sales. At 29 years of age, literally about 2 months before turning 30, I was playing in a very high-level competitive men's basketball league, and I was kicked in the testicles, and fortunate that, was fine, went home, iced it, whatever, did the normal stuff. But like about 2.5 to 3 months later, I was feeling really lost my energy, lost my mojo, didn't know what was going on. I was very, very blessed, pure luck. I mean, as we both know, nothing happens in a chance or coincidence in life. I was taken to a PPO doctor who recommended me to an endocrinologist. He said, I want to order some tests because you shouldn't be feeling the way you did. And so the endocrinologist happened to be a Harvard-educated endocrinologist. His name was Dr. Raymond Scruggs. He ordered a testosterone panel. Now, this is back in literally 1999, way before, what we have today, where men are actually more aware of or cognizant of this. And it turned out that I had the testosterone levels of like a geriatric. It was, I think it was sub 260 or 255 or something like that. And so I didn't know anything about that. He explained to me the process. He said, look, I want to put you on therapeutic testosterone. It's a very simple process. We're going to inject you 1 time a week, and you're going to feel great, blah, 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 back to, you'll be back to where you were. So I went home, and this is my first wife. This is a long time ago. I was literally, like I said, about a month away from turning 30, and we were both kind of apprehensive, but both also very not afraid to take chances. We're adapters, and we would always, look at change as a necessary part of life. So I said, you know what, let's do it. See what happens. Within literally a month of taking testosterone under his clinical supervision, I felt amazing. Okay. And then from there, being the kind of person I was, my background in school, I majored in international relations. I had a minor in molecular biology and a couple other things. I was kind of a bookish, nerdish, like to read studies type of guy. I started reading about testosterone, and there wasn't a lot of data. There wasn't a lot of stuff that you could find. There were studies, but there weren't a lot of books. There was not much. So anyway, I became really, really studious in it. I ordered every single book that you could possibly get back then. One of the books was Nelson Virgil and Michael Mooney's book, Built to Survive, which was a book about HIV patients and patients that had wasting diseases that were using testosterone to enhance recovery so that they could actually maintain survival in a world where, their survival rates were very minimal at that time when HIV had first come out. And then there were a couple other books that were more around like the bodybuilding culture that talked about the usage of testosterone. But from there, I really got deep into learning it. Fast forward it, I never stopped taking it. Okay. I still had 2 children on it. When I was 36, I had my first daughter. When I was 38, I had my second daughter, but I stayed using a very therapeutic dosage of testosterone. To fast forward to now, I've been on testosterone now for 18 years, nonstop. I've obviously mastered the usage. In about 10 to 12 years into using it, my friends and my kind of inner circle and clique of people kind of grew. I became pretty successful in the automotive space as a senior level sales, and then eventually a vice president for Kelley Blue Book, which is kvb.com, the car information website. I met a lot of influential people, and they always would find out. They're like, wow, how are you in such great shape? Why do you have such amazing energy, blah, blah, blah. And I'd always tell them, hey, it's not a secret. This is what I do. And so from some of those guys, pushing me, like, Jay, you know so much about this stuff. Why don't you write a book? And this was probably now, fast forward to like 2011, 2012. I thought about it for a second, and then I reached out to, actually I would say this is 2012, 2013. I reached out to the biggest attorney in the world regarding performance enhancement, athletic endeavors for people that were using testosterone or quote unquote anabolic steroids or whatever. And I asked him, I said, look, as a layperson, a non-medical professional, if I wrote this book, what kind of legal indemnification could you provide me, that nobody would come after me? He was very honest. He read the book first. I kind of had like a white paper that was probably maybe put into like 40 or 50 pages. And he read it for me. He said, Jay, this is the makings of a really good book. But very truthfully, his name is, by the way, he's an attorney. His name is Rick Collins. Him and I are now very close personal friends. He said, I couldn't guarantee you any kind of amnesty or safe harbor or anything like that. All it takes is, with testosterone in the government, it's one, politician, senator level to, as he said, get a bug up his ass about who you are and look into you. And if you have any dirt on your record, you're going to be spending a lot of money with me to keep yourself out of the federal penitentiary, right? So I was like, whoa, he's telling me you're a non-doctor, don't write the book. So I stopped, right? Thankfully, I'd sent the same white paper to like 3 or 4 other major players in the space, and one of those was Nelson Virgil. And Nelson Virgil was the author of Built to Survive. Nelson is now also a very good friend of mine. I actually consider a mentor to me. He's been on testosterone for 35 years. He's probably the most renowned person in the world as an HIV survivor. He also wrote the very first book on testosterone that got critical acclaim. It was called Testosterone, A Man's Guide. He read the book, but he was in his native country of Venezuela when I first sent it to him. And so he didn't respond to me for like literally 3 months later. And when he came back to the States, he sent me an email out of the blue and he said, look, I'd like to talk to you. I don't know who you are, but this book is amazing. We need to talk. And I told him about what had happened with Rick Collins. And he said, who cares what Rick Collins said? He's an attorney. His goal is to try to, let you know that there's risks and everything. But look, I work with the DEA. I am on panels with the FDA. This is the type of information that needs to get out to the public. You need to publish your book. How can I help you? So that was like literally at the very beginning, middle of 2014. And that was, the rest, as they say, is history. He helped me with it. We wrote it, we edited it further. I published the first book, which was my first book, in the end of 2015 in November on Amazon. As of today, it's the #1 selling book of all time on testosterone replacement therapy. Subsequently, I released another book, as you know, David, in February of this year called the Testosterone Optimization Therapy Bible, which is essentially 2 years later. And that book is way beyond the first book. I mean, we call it the Bible because it's 600 pages. It has every single bit of research that's ever been published, any study on the positives or the negatives of testosterone. I mean, we like I said, we call it the Bible for a reason. I also have 6 of the top optimization physicians in the world and one of the top compounding pharmacist owners who help me. They're kind of on our science team. So we like to think that it literally is the world's most cutting edge data so far that's been able to be collated and put forth out there for people to read, obviously patients and doctors alone. So far, the success of the book has been amazing. It's still in the top 5 on Amazon right now for men's health books, and maybe another 4 or 5 other categories. It's in the top 5 as well. So the book is amazing, and that's kind of where I am here today. I didn't talk about my spiritual component. My wife and I are very, very big into what I would call the mindfulness. As you know, I kind of coined the term. I didn't coin it, but I mean, I use the term pretty religiously now, spiritual fitness. I'm very, very big into the realms of the unseen in the quantum world. And like you quantified, I think, too, is energy. We're very, very big on that. I believe that that's like tantamount to everything. I believe that everything that, happens to us, we can silence it with our mind and with our spiritual work. And so, like I said, I'm humbled and honored to be here today to talk to you. But that's kind of the backstory of how I got to where I am here today to write these books.
Thank you. So before we go any further, just to define our terms for people that are watching and listening, I want you to talk about the difference between, define the distinctions between testosterone or hormonal optimization therapy and what some athletes and bodybuilders are doing, where they're taking humongous amounts of testosterone and other things. Let's make that distinction first.
Yeah, for sure. Great question, or a great frame of reference. So bodybuilders / athletes, performance enhancement enthusiasts, whatever, when they take testosterone, and this is, we'll expand this conversation beyond testosterone to talk about like anabolic steroids. Well, let me just back up a bit. So the difference, so testosterone is not really a drug, even though it's regarded as such by the United States DEA, and it's a controlled 3 substance, which makes it illegal to prescribe without a physician notice. It's a hormone, first and foremost, and it's obviously naturally produced by the human body. Obviously, testosterone is the most powerful sexual differentiator. And as we know, women today use testosterone to become men, and men who are women, it's so confusing with all that stuff, but men who are men who want to become women have to suppress their testosterone. So it's the most powerful sex differentiating hormone in the human body. The fact that it's outlawed or illegal, to have to get without a prescription is a whole other story for another day. We could, get into that later in the show. But when people use testosterone in the ways that I recommend, and what you're talking about, is for therapeutic purposes. We're using a very, very low, what you would call a micro dosage of testosterone to optimize a man or woman's, because you can use testosterone for both men and women's system. What bodybuilders or performance enhancement specialists or athletes or whatever are using, as you said, they use super physiologic levels. They use a dosage that is not healthy. It puts people into a level that there is substantial risk. I won't say it's like, worse than using heroin or cocaine or something like that, because it's clearly not. But taking like super physiologic levels or dosages is not what we're recommending from a health optimization or a lifestyle optimization position when we talk about hormone optimization. They're 2 entirely different things. A therapeutic dosage of testosterone is somewhere in the range of 75 to 200 milligrams a week of testosterone. Okay. And there are multiple delivery systems. There are multiple ways to dose it, multiple frequency patterns. So there's a lot of different ways, and we can get into all those details about how best to use it and stuff like that. But there's a clear differentiation that people need to understand. And as you know, David, it bears mentioning, the media pushes forth so much misinformation. Okay. The very term testosterone usually makes people cringe. They withdraw. It's kind of a vilification statement or term in the media whenever they say it.
We'll get into that aspect of it later.
Okay.
Yeah, but for now, I want to make sure that the viewers and listeners get that distinction. And then the other distinction I want to make sure we put on the mat right away is the distinction between bioidentical hormones and synthetic. And,
right.
And let's make that distinction. And it also has implications, societal implications, because the synthetic hormones have a lot of side effects, and because they can be patented, the finances are very different as well. And so let's talk about the type of hormones we're talking about here compared to like what most people might know, like the kind of hormones that most women are getting when they get put on the pill.
Right. Okay, yeah, so it's a good point. So, I mean, testosterone is very easily confused by a lot of physicians. And unfortunately, and again, we're not here to disparage physicians, but unfortunately, there is no standard care patient or standard patient of care model when it comes to hormonal optimization. So most physicians that prescribe hormones, testosterone included amongst other things, have to learn on their own. There is nothing in medical school that teaches them this. The textbooks that they use are very outdated. And they're not up to speed at all on like the best ways to actually utilize this in standard practice. But testosterone, the testosterone molecule is bioidentical in nature because once testosterone is synthesized, it's equal to the testosterone that men and women produce naturally. There's a confusion in the market space a lot of times when they say I'm using bioidentical and so-and-so's, using non-bioidentical testosterone. There's no such thing. If you're using pharmaceutical grade testosterone, it is bioidentical by nature. But to differentiate, there are obviously other hormonal prescriptions, like especially for women, they can get estrogen, they can get progesterone. There's other medications / drugs that also kind of are in the hormonal cascade of females that when women optimize their hormones, they may be using a combination of them. But testosterone is also used. So from the best physicians, and you just had a conversation with one of them who works on a lot of women and has been prescribing hormones to women for 13 years. He actually prescribes progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone in a combination cream to use to optimize a woman's hormones. So it's intricate and it's a little bit different than what men do.
But what I'm getting at is that the type of synthetic progesterone that most women are taking in a pill has completely different effects in the body than natural progesterone. And so one of the things I wanted to bring out is that the type of testosterone you're talking about isn't a patented form where they monkey with it. And that's part of why they don't want to push it, because there's not that much money in selling a drug that's not patentable.
It's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, there's the majority. I think there's like 4 different pharmaceutical mainstream manufacturers. Upjohn, and I can't even think of it. The names all escape me. But there's like 4 that will sell cypionate, ananthate, propionate, which are the 3 primary esters of injectable testosterone. And then there are numerous compounding pharmacies that will sell like blends of all of those type, and then they just compound manufacture. But you're exactly right. There's no profit center in any of them because they can't patent any of them because, again, testosterone is like like we said, it's bioidentical. It's molecularly unique to our own endogenous production of the hormone, so there's no way they can do anything to it. However, it's worth mentioning that the synthetics are anabolic steroids. So all other drugs and I'll just name a few of them, like Winstrol, Decadurabolin, methanolone. There's like 2 or 3 other ones that are FDA approved for select wasting conditions and select diseases and stuff like that, growth hormone, pituitary disorders and whatnot. Those are all synthetics. And as you said, when you put a synthetic into your body, because it's not molecularly identical to what's coursing through your veins, you will have more side effects. You will have more systemic issues. It will offset your body's natural homeostatic mechanism, which is known as your in men, it's known as your HPGA, which is your hypogonadal axis. That will offset that and cause a lot of problems. The same thing for women. If women actually use those synthetic drugs, it can also destabilize their natural menses cycle and all that stuff too. So all those things, when you institute a synthetic into your body, you can definitely cause issues.
So what I'm wanting to establish here at the beginning of our conversation, so there's a basis of understanding, is we're talking about relatively low doses of a natural substance that's designed to optimize human health and wellness, and where there's not much money in it for the pharmaceutical companies.
Exactly. Well,
that's what
as you know, you can get a bottle of testosterone cypionate that lasts most men on an average of 14 to 16, depending on dosage, even longer weeks for $44. And that's even in California, as you know, right? So why would the physician community, the pharmaceutical companies that obviously control them, and then above the pharmaceutical companies, the people that control the lobbies of the pharmaceutical companies, why would they go out there and push testosterone? Because there's no profit center. Now, as you know, there are delivery systems that are pushed way more than others because there is somewhat of a profit center to them, and that would be androgel. But as I write in my book, and anyone who has been doing this for a while knows, they're completely and wholly ineffective. In fact, they actually cause more harm than good.
And of course, that can be used by the dark side to say, hey, this doesn't work very well.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's why there's all these lawsuits. So you'll have people watch our show and they will say, David, why do you have this guy on? That testosterone stuff is garbage because there's all these lawsuits. Right now, there's 1,300 still class action lawsuits that need to be decided. Most of them will be dismissed, but some of them have actually ruled at the first level, at the state level, before going to the Superior Court, and rule in favor of the plaintiff, which is a sham. I mean, it's a frivolous lawsuit by an attorney, trying to figure things out when they don't even know anything. But it is. That's exactly right. So they will use it against us for sure.
And just to thicken the plot even further, it turns out that a lot of presenting complaints that patients have where they're currently being prescribed expensive other drugs, it turns out that if they had their hormones optimized, that the need for those drugs would either disappear or go way, way down. So in that sense, we're really stepping on the big boy's toes here. And so
that's a very good point, David. If I can just say this, one of the top physicians that I know, I won't mention his name, but one of the top optimization physicians in the country actually believes, and I agree with him, I have his quote in the book, he says that testosterone, hormonal optimization, obviously evaluating a patient's blood work, should be the first line of defense treatment for every male and female diabetic in the United States. Now, when I say diabetic, we talk about type 2 diabetes, right? So an older person who's eating like shit, haven't taken care of themselves, and then goes in and they, want to start talking about insulin or some medications, as you already mentioned, if they would just have their blood work and they found out that they had a hormonal imbalance, prescribing them and balancing their hormones would literally solve the issue. And that's one of the most expensive.
I believe there's another doctor in your book, that talks about that for mild to moderate depression and anxiety.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We'll talk about that.
That the same pattern would apply.
Yep. 100% for men. Testosterone is the root, a testosterone deficiency is normally the root cause of all etiologies of the brain. So depression, memory, cognition, and as you know, we have a huge section in the book on dementia and Alzheimer's and how testosterone prevents it. So yeah, it's incredible how amazing this molecule is. It truly is a wonder molecule, a fountain of youth molecule. But again, people at this point, as you and I know, have to be extremely proactive with their health to get it, because you cannot go to your average general practitioner and ask them for help, because even if they are willing to write you a script, they don't unfortunately understand how to do this, and it takes you down a bad pathway.
So what I'm trying to make a case for is a logical case to be able to answer the question, well, why, if this is so great, how come I'm not hearing about it, or I'm not hearing better things about it? I'm wanting to provide a context where people aren't just going to blow this conversation off, where at least maybe they'll have an open mind to this conversation. So thanks for hanging in there.
Let me also say this. Anyone who watches your podcast, as you know, I'm not financially driven. That's not what drives me. I work from the heart. I'm pure heart chakra based. I will send you the book for free. All you have to do is just send me an email at jay@trtrevolution.com. So it's TRT, Testosterone Replacement Therapy, which we killed that acronym because it's a useless acronym. But that's my old email address and my domain. So it's trtrevolution.com. Just send me an email and I'll be happy to send you the PDF of the book for free.
Great. So there's a couple directions I want to go here, but one of the things I want to say is one of the things that I do is I pay a lot of attention when I'm when I'm meeting a new person, I really just do a lot of watching and a lot of listening. And we've been getting to know each other. And one of the things I really admire about you, besides your energy and your commitment and your ability to structure information in bite-sized ways, is I've really been impressed with the quality of doctors that you've been able to attract as part of your team. That must be a superpower that you have, is really being really good at doing that. Because
I appreciate that, man. I truly appreciate that.
I think that is so important because, you know, I consider myself to be like a contemporary mystic or a practical visionary. So my interests are, number one, in knowing what's true. And then number two, when I discover something that is an innovation that could really make a difference in people's lives, the invention doesn't do any good at a societal level if it doesn't turn into an innovation that people actually adopt and they actually change their daily practices. And so because I look at things that way, as I'm becoming more and more convinced of the value of hormonal assessment and natural hormone assessment and optimization as part of an overall wellness plan, then my next question that I ask myself is, how can we disseminate this invention, this innovation, so that it actually gets adopted by the society or by the community that we're wanting to impact? And so that brings up questions like, how do we have more competent physicians? What is the optimal role of lay people like yourself? How do good caring physicians and sharp lay people like yourself, how do they synergize? How do we make the whole process affordable? These are the questions that come to my mind. And, you know, the model that I'm coming to over the last few years with regard to health promotion is really encouraging people to get out of the insurance game, take some of that money and join a healthcare co-op at a much lower cost that will cover the catastrophic issues, like if you break a bone or if you have to go to the hospital, God forbid, and take the balance of that money and invest it in some kind of personalized wellness plan, just like you would invest in anything else, and start to put together a wellness team. And I think it's in that kind of context that this particular innovation is going to gain traction through the doctors the kind of doctors you're attracting, the doctors that are attracted to a functional medicine model, the doctors that are attracted to an energetic medicine model, combined with good marketing people, sharp lay people that can figure out what part has to be done by the doctor, what part can be delegated to people that don't charge the same rate per hour. How do you create a model where the doctor has a financial incentive to get you well and keep you well as quickly as possible? And I think there are technological innovations that are going to be a part of making this affordable in terms of apps and ways to monitor yourself. And I think there are going to be community support systems that are going to come. I see it all coming together, but I think maybe the weakest links in the chain are going to be, number one, to have enough really good doctors that are willing to take a stand for this, because a lot of these doctors have hundreds of thousands or if not millions of dollars invested in their current gig and their current education. Yes. That's going to be a biggie. And then to keep the cost down, obviously telemedicine is going to play a big part. And then there's certain states that definitely don't want that. So there's all of that going on. So when I'm finished talking, if you want to say anything about that, that's one thing that's on my mind. The other thing that's on my mind is the safety issue. You know, as natural as these substances are, you do have to be medically managed, at least the first year or two, while you're dialing in what you need. And so there's safety issues. There's a lot of misinformation out there. I don't want to mention any names, but I know a doctor who recommends a certain amount of a aromatase inhibitor, that if someone were to go along with that dosage levels, they would crash their estrogen levels and end up having all sorts of problems. And so even though we're dealing with micro dosages of natural substances, this isn't like a vitamin. This isn't like a mineral. This isn't like an herb. This is a different animal, and it needs to be monitored properly and treated with respect by someone that knows what they're doing. So
let me stop you right there.
Those are the two tracks that my mind goes down at this point.
Well, they're really good points, and so I want to address both of them before you go too far. So for the first point is exceptional. My family and I are already doing that. I'm with Liberty Health Share, and I've been with Liberty Health Share for 2 years. They're based out of Omaha, Nebraska. I think they're Omaha, Nebraska, somewhere in the Midwest. I highly recommend anybody who's watching this podcast who wants to break away from the corporate Gestapo health insurance scenario to go to Liberty Health Share. I think it's .net. And to sign up, I pay $499 a month for myself, my wife, and 5 children. And it's essentially like you exactly say, it's like a membership cooperative. And they have like safe harbor under the Obama Affordable Care Act as a religious institute. And so it's kind of like a workaround, but they like any type of medical insurance or benefit that you would receive. Your kid breaks their leg, you and your wife, like for me, I'll explain in a second, like you want to get your annual health, you want to get a massive internal diagnostic done of your blood work. They reimburse up to $400 per each person per year, completely sent back to you. You can go to your own private medical labs, which is what I do. I get all my own private blood work done, which probably cost me somewhere in the range of like $360 because I get a lot of really good stuff done. It's totally reimbursable. But anyway, these guys are amazing. You pay $499 a month and they literally reimburse like 98%. Now, obviously there's no drug benefit because they won't write you prescriptions for all the garbage drugs. But you can still pay out of pocket with certain providers that they have because they do have, I think it's called Savings Net or something, or Drug Savings Net or something. I don't know. And so you can get discounted similar to GoodRx. But that's a really good option for people who don't want to continue to pay the HMO and PPO scandalous rates and then get zero, coverage because they make you pay a huge copay and then you get a bill when you leave. It's all such a scam. But to address that, in our world, in the hormonal optimization space with bringing in doctors, David, that's what's going to happen already. It's kind of just an if-then scenario. The best doctors, which, as you know, some of them are in my book, their stories they're very outspoken about their stories now. They had to leave standard patient care medicine. Some of these guys are very, very famous, successful, board certified practitioners where they're a part of the business, like Merrill Matschke, who's one of my close friends, who was one of the biggest urologists in the country, out of Chicago. I mean, it was like leaving a cult, to leave. He one day woke up in the morning and said, I can't do this. I became a doctor, become a real doctor. I'm a healer. And I go in and every day and I see my patients for 5 minutes. I go up and look at a board and I have 38 people I have to see in an 8-hour, 9-hour shift. I'm done. I can't do it. So when he left or tried to leave, it was hell. I mean, all of his partner, urologists came at him. How can you do this? How can you turn your back on this profession? I mean, so for the physicians that are leaving that mafia, environment, whatever you want to call it, it's really difficult. I mean, Merrill literally, if he wasn't like intensive into his meditation and his mindfulness training and everything that he does, he would have really, really had problems. He probably would have manifested into physical sickness. So you are right. It's very difficult to leave the established healthcare, Gestapo mafia model to do what we practice and what we're here espousing. And I do believe that it will happen inevitably because I do believe the sick care model or the illness medicine model is going to collapse. as you and I were talking off air, and we can get down that path if you want to. The systems, the archaic, antiquated, brick and mortar systems of the world of the past are dying. Technology is expanding at such a fast rate, it's going to collapse those things. But then to your other thing, which is very important that we talk about, which you talked about, testosterone optimization is definitely something that you do need to be medically managed. Initially, 100%. And obviously over time, you always need to be, because you need to get your blood work done. But I want people who watch the show to understand this. So 60 years ago, this was not necessary, okay? 60 years ago, we were mostly an agrarian economy in the United States. We did not have, the industrialization and all the modernization and all the chemicals and all of the, particulates, BPA, phytoestrogens, xenoestrogens, all of these things, phthalates, these horrible endocrine disrupting chemicals that are ubiquitous and unavoidable in our environment. We did not have those then. So people literally didn't have to consider testosterone optimization from exogenous means, obviously, the way we're talking about it through therapeutic means, because it wasn't necessary. You could literally live in today's modern day environment. You could go outside in nature. You could eat a wholesome cooked food meal, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. And most people's natural endocrine systems could maintain high natural levels of testosterone. And as you know, David, in the book, from the World War II generation in the 40s and 50s, a man's testosterone level, and I don't know what a woman's were, but for sure women's, and we'll talk about that if you want, with women's birth control. A man's testosterone level in that generation, so 60, 70 years ago, was literally 300% higher naturally than the average man walking around the street today. That is a scientific fact. I have all of the data in my book. There's a monumental study from last year called the Hebrew University study. You mentioned it at the very beginning of it in your conversation, talking about setting up this entire element so people could understand it. But by 2043, and it might be 2042 if somebody wants to check me, they're saying in the study that men will be infertile. Every man on this planet, in the current rate of degradation to the sperms, to spermatozoa, men will be irrelevant. We will be completely extinct from the propagation cycle of our species. So if something is not dramatically done, and we do not take this, optimization of our hormones into serious concern, and obviously be proactive and obviously instituted in our medical system, men aren't even going to be relevant anyway. So it's imperative, in my opinion, that if you're watching the show today, it doesn't matter if you're 30 or you're 70, okay? You, man or woman, can benefit from optimizing your hormones. This is something that is more critical than anything else, because literally, as I say this whenever I speak, whenever I'm talking to people, the very, biological directive of humankind as men are on the danger of going bye-bye and literally not able to even reproduce. And that's not far. And that's literally less than 25 years from now. So, in the historical blip of mankind, that is a blip. So, it's very important that you do take this, what we're talking about today, serious. This is not steroids. This is not some crazy guy talking to you, talking about using testosterone. I mean, this is literally like life or death to understand how you're going to optimize your hormones. I mean, that's where we're going with this.
So can you do a very Cliff Notes version of, for the men that are watching, of classic, easily observable signs and symptoms without doing any testing that might give you a clue that your testosterone levels or your testosterone to estrogen ratios are getting pretty far away from optimal?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, and most people don't understand this, but the first symptom is brain fog or a loss of cognition. And that normally presents to most men, regardless of age, as the feeling of complete lifelessness, lethargy, just zero energy by 2:00 in the afternoon. Most men literally at 2:00 in the afternoon feel like they need to go take a nap, or they feel like, I'm done. I want to go home. I can't focus. I have zero energy. I can't even answer my work related issues or my family, my wife's in my ear, whatever. That's normally the number one symptom. Another way to know is if you wake up if you have zero morning erections, they talk about morning wood. If you have no erectile strength, or, you cannot get any kind of hard on or a permanent erection when you wake up in the morning between the hours of say 5 and 7 a.m., that's usually a telltale sign too. And then beyond that, the more classical known stuff are like complete inability to exercise, just zero energy. You cannot get yourself out of bed to go to the gym. You can't get yourself up on a bike. You can't even go outside in nature to walk your dog. That's usually a telltale sign. And then I would think the other one, which is really becoming prevalent in the younger men of today, it's actually not prevalent, it's a crisis, it's an epidemic, is the high estrogen dominance. And when you're estrogen dominant, you literally act like a woman. You're non-confrontational, okay? You're super passive aggressive, and you have absolutely an inability to be decisive. Everything is always like, well, I don't know, honey, what do you want to do? Or at work, you can't make a decision, and your coworkers or your subordinates or even your superiors are constantly looking at you like, dude, get it together. Give me an answer. Tell me what you want. Tell me what needs to happen. So that is like in the younger guys today, that's what we're seeing. And that build out is obviously, as you know, David, when you and I were talking in the last couple of days since we met, and you're right, we're very kindred spirits. We're definitely on the same mission. That's what you see in social media right now with our younger males. They are checked out. They are playing video games. They are sexless. They literally don't even, when I say they're sexless, they don't even have they have no testosterone. There's no desire to even want to have sex or to procreate or to chase women or anything. So, you combine those factors with the idea that postmodern feminism, and this isn't to talk about that, but let's just say it for a second. Postmodern feminism, encourages women to be very dominant and be very, I'm equal to the man. Well, that's not going to work when you have a bunch of men who are weak, who don't even want to be men. So that's where we find ourselves kind of today in society. But, this is something that affects across all age groups. If you talk to some of the doctors in my book, the top guys right now, they will tell you, and this is crazy to say this, but they will tell you that up to 40% of all men under the age of 30 right now have some form of an issue of either estrogen dominance or low testosterone. And that is insane.
So it sounds like we might be able to say that there are three major groups of men. There's sort of like the over 50, 55 group, right. And then there's the people that are 30s and 40s, early 40s, and they want to be at peak levels, but they also have to be concerned about being able to continue to be fertile, right, even if they're on testosterone, and that makes the medical management of it a little more complex. And Correct. Then you've got this sort of lost generation of young people that have had to, that have dealt with a physical and metaphysical environment for growing up that we can only describe as hellish.
Yes, correct.
So I think there needs to be some intelligent conversation about those three groups and the fact that they need to be addressed a little bit differently. I think that's important going down the road. So, if someone is listening to this and they're thinking, hey, I'd like to get a baseline reading on my levels, one of the things that's great is that there are several companies now that, because of their connection with the physician, will allow you to get tests done without having your own personal physician.
Correct.
It's great. There's Direct Labs, there's Nelson's company, you can recommend other companies. So a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people don't know without having...
It's a good point. Everyone, that should be primary option number one. Everyone watching this podcast, both male and female, regardless of whether you have a primary care practitioner or anybody, Get your blood work done. As you know, David, we give you very, very explicit instructions in the book on how to do this, both as a male or a female. And by the way, the book that I've written to also has a very prominent chapter for women. So I don't want people who watch this, because we do focus on men, obviously, but we have an amazing chapter in the book by Dr. Meehan, who David has spoken to, and my wife, Monica, who's an amazing woman. They're actually working on their own book privately that's going to help women dramatically too. But David, that is so true. If you do anything from this podcast, absolutely go to either discounted labs, it's discounted with an ED, private MD, medical doctor labs, as you said, direct labs. There's a number of them in every major city. And literally you can do this stuff for under $200. And it will tell you everything you want to know.
I think residents of New York are not allowed to do that.
That's true. Residents of New York and New Jersey, they have to drive across state lines
Okay.
and give a fake ad of friends.
Okay. Right. But so that I think is an important thing because you must get a baseline.
Yes.
And one of my pet peeves would be any doctor, I believe it's malpractice, who would begin to prescribe hormonal treatments without a baseline is committing malpractice.
Yeah, well, it's illegal actually in most states to do that. But you're right. But even so, to further extend that, if they did that and then didn't know how to read your lab work and still prescribed you just to make money, which they don't make a lot of money, but there's some, depending on the delivery system they can, then it's even worse. So you're right. I mean, it's like everything, unfortunately, in today's day and age. It goes back to what you said, which you made a really good, overarching, conscientious point. This has to be this has to be given and sent to the masses in a receivable format that's affordable, as you said. And I personally believe it's coming. I believe that right now, you and I are still 10 years and perhaps if we're lucky 5 years ahead of the curve. Because David, what we're not talking about, and we need to, is as bad as it might be in the United States, you can't even imagine how bad it is internationally. I mean, there are entire...
How bad it is with regard to what?
They can't get even a physician. There's entire nations in the world that will not even prescribe testosterone. They don't even have a single physician in the country. Most of the Norwegian countries will not prescribe testosterone. Literally. Like I have guys writing me every day from Denmark, from Finland, from Scandinavian countries, begging me to pay me whatever it is to counsel them so that they can do this themselves, because they can go pretty much to any pharmacy in anywhere in the EU and buy testosterone over the counter legally. I shouldn't say any, but many. But yet the standard patient care model, the socialized medical systems of their country, this is not acceptable. The doctors will be penalized, So you can only imagine the opportunity for all of us, both financially and more importantly, responsibly as a humanistic perspective to help people, because this is an epidemic globally, an absolute epidemic.
Let's talk about women. So one of my problems with the standard of care for helping women with their hormones is that they're being given synthetic hormones. And then another thing that to me is criminal, it really is a disrespect to the divine feminine, is especially for women that are menstruating, is that women are rhythmic. Women have cycles. And if you study physiology, I mean, this isn't wooey-wooey, this is Harrison's physiology, right? If you study physiology, estrogen has a major peak in the first half of the cycle, has a little bit of a second peak, and then wanes off, and then testosterone has a peak in the second half, and then there's a little testosterone peak toward the middle. And if your dosages that you're taking are not in sync with that rhythm, you're not being respected as a woman. And if your hormones you're taking are synthetic, you're not being respected as a woman. And you have a right to be a healthy woman. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and make a prediction. I'm going to say that within 5 or 6 years, it will become much more common knowledge that this kind of care that I'm talking about is available, and it'll be available at a fairly affordable price.
I mean, I can't disagree with you. I mean, we can go a lot of directions with women. I'll just, we'll do 100,000-foot summary. So women, before the WHI study came out, women were very easily able to go to any garden variety physician and get hormonal treatment for premenopause, postmenopause. I've had 3 kids, my thyroid's malfunction, I have thyroid dysregulation, whatever, and go to any doctor and they would prescribe them hormones. Now, obviously, because you've already said it very cogently and you've elucidated it well, at that time they were using synthetic forms of horse or equine estrogen. And a lot of women got cancer. Now, the problem is that immediately the WHI study came out and said that it was completely wrong and women were dying and this was causing blah, 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 blah. And so literally, and I'm going from memory and I'm not a super expert when it comes to women like I am with men, but I think it was 2003 or 2002. They shut it down, and all the physicians that were prescribing hormones to women, other than guys like Dr. Meehan, and they're a very small, tiny percentage of the population, stopped prescribing hormones to women. So now they've analyzed the WHI study in the last year and a half, and they came out and they basically openly admitted that all the data was wrong and that they misread the data. And they actually have, David, an estimate. They believe that they probably have killed over 50,000 women since they shut average doctors down from prescribing hormones, because women who needed the hormonal treatments didn't get it and died an early death. They had hysterectomy cancers, all kinds of fibroid tumor cancers, and all of these things could have easily been treated with, hormonal optimization done right, which, as you know, is rhythmic. It's actually, Jim Meehan calls it biorhythmic, which is more apropos. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. More physicians now, thankfully, in the community are now back to prescribing hormones for women. There are thousands, I should say hundreds of thousands of women in North America right now that are on hormonal optimization. My wife is one of them, and their life is amazing, right? Like, they have unlimited energy. They maintain a sexy, virile appearance, both mentally and physically. And they're amazing. I mean, again, my wife is, 46 years old, and she looks better than most 22-year-old women in their prime. So any woman who takes care of themselves, also through a proper hormonal optimization protocol, can do the same. When I say take care of themselves, I mean, obviously do all the things that you and I know about, right? Which is exercise, eat right, do the mindfulness training and that kind of stuff, look within before you go without.
But again, I want to bring this point up again, is that there's a really big difference between natural progesterone, for example, and synthetic progesterone. Dr. John Lee, the late Dr. John Lee, did some great work in this area. And if you look in the PDR on synthetic progesterone, it is a scary thing to look up. There's some serious, sometimes even fatal side effects of that synthetic drug, but yet natural progesterone is needed by most women. Most women have an estrogen to progesterone ratio that's too high. That's called estrogen dominance. Even if their absolute values of estrogen are not high, if that ratio is too high, you can have a lot of problems. And believe me, just because you're not of childbearing years anymore doesn't mean you don't need natural progesterone.
There's no question. There's no question. Most women too, just to throw it in there, most women who are premenopausal could use testosterone because, and again, when we talk testosterone, just to be clear, when we talk testosterone for women versus men, we're talking like stratospherically divergent dosage levels. Like, a woman on therapeutic levels of testosterone would literally take like 10 to 15 milligrams probably a month. Now, some women I know go up to as high as 12 milligrams a week, but that's a lot. And just so men and women understand the differentiation, like David and I would take like 100 milligrams per week versus, 1/10 or 1/9 or 1/8 of that in a month. But again, testosterone, again, is such a powerful base molecule, and it's so involved in so many different biological systems that therapeutically increasing one's endogenous supply of it just does so many amazing things. And again, obviously they're written about in my book.
Okay, so let's take a deep breath and let's pan out and let's go really big picture now.
Sure.
So I'm going to make some assertions that are not in the realm of being able to prove it scientifically, but I'm going to make some assertions that I think there's a lot of evidence to support. Okay? So those of you that have been following me for years know pretty much my worldview, which I'm going to succinctly summarize and then get into the implications in this particular conversation.
Hold on, David, can I put my tinfoil hat on real quick? Because I do have a tinfoil hat.
Sure.
Okay, hold on.
Sure.
I always have to wear this. This was sent to me by my good friend, Rex Bear of the Leak Project.
Okay.
But very good.
So my big picture worldview here is that most human beings are well-meaning people, but there are a small percentage of people that are actively serving the dark side and that are extremely intelligent, extremely cunning, very well financed, well organized, and have almost an infinite amount of patience. What they don't have is creativity. What they don't have is access to the heart. What they don't have is access to love. What they don't have is access to life. And so they have to be parasitic in nature. They have to be viral in nature, in the sense that they have to alter your software,
yep,
if you will. And because we live in, to a large extent, a free will zone of the universe, if good people are not claiming their divine rights, if good people are not becoming wise, if good people are not willing and able to take action, because we live in a free will zone to a large extent, the dark forces can dominate and manipulate a world to a great extent. And those of us that understand how they do it, it becomes pretty obvious to see. There are divide and conquer strategies, obfuscation, lies, distractions, threats, duress, coercion. And so one of the big things they have to do, the dark side has to do, is they have to attack potential major focuses of the light. And so the United States has the potential, as a constitutional republic, and having spiritual ideals at its initial basis, has the potential to be a light for the world even. And so when America claimed its independence from Europe, from England, the powers that they were trying to get away from didn't go away. And you can even see it if you have the eyes to see it. You can see as early as the War of 1812, where the same European bankers tried to get their hooks into our banking system. You can see the way the Civil War was fomented. You can see the way it was financed by the European banking houses. You can go on and on. You can look at the way we were bamboozled into World War I. You can see the income tax. You can see the Federal Reserve. You can see the way the Depression was engineered. You can see our fake event, the events that led to our involvement in World War II, on and on and on, being taken off the gold standard, fiat money.
They're engineering the next depression right now.
Yeah. You can see Kennedy's assassination. You can see the excuses for the Vietnam War. You can see the attempts to cull the population. You can see what's happening with the food supply, overly prescribed pharmaceuticals, vaccines, GMOs. You can see the way the dark forces have gotten their hooks into organized religion, the New Age movement, public schools, medicine, agribusiness, on and on and on and on. And so, so that's what I see in terms of the big picture, that we are people of the lie. But within that, there are what I would call light workers. There are people that, through the grace of God, have somehow either been awake or have been able to awaken from this hypnosis, and due to the internet and due to other things that are going on, we are rapidly finding each other, and we're rapidly communicating, and we're establishing relationships, and we're developing a parallel reality with new groups, new organizations, and eventually moving in the direction of new communities. And to me, this is going to bring together the best of spirituality with the best of science, with the best of the white hats and the patriots coming together. And what I see that the dark forces are losing. What I see is that even though it seems on the surface like they're winning, if you look deeper, it seems to me that they're in panic mode and they're losing. And that's the good news. On the other hand, when people are panicked, very, very often they behave in very strange and violent ways. And so therefore, I also think that we need to be really smart. Clever as a serpent, peaceful as a dove. Now, with that as a big picture, to me, one of their main strategies has been to weaken the family unit.
Absolutely.
If you don't have a strong family unit, it's much easier to sell the idea to people that government will become your big daddy or your mama. In order to do that, you've got to do a few things. You've got to weaken the bonds between men and women. You've got to make it economically and sociologically difficult for a woman to choose to stay at home when her children are young. And then, of course, you've got to infect children.
Yes.
Basically, infect children so that they lose their innocence when they're young. And then you've got to make them sick from the very beginning. So there's this massive assault on the family. And part of that is this massive assault on true femininity and true masculinity.
Correct.
So within that picture, that's where I'm coming from when I look at the fact that hormonally we're in the pits. In other words, to me, this is absolutely no accident, that this is absolutely part of a much bigger story. And so one of the things that I wonder about is, could this issue, if it's presented to the public in an intelligent, accessible way, be a doorway to get people's attention so that eventually over time we build credibility and trust, and they're more open to the bigger picture too.
David, I have to give you mad props, because I have done a lot of podcasts in the last 3.5 years. And before that, I was doing Google Hangouts, and you are so in depth and so, like, how's the word I want to say? You have such an amazing working knowledge of what is going on. I mean, like, you just like lit up every chakra in my body. I'm like on fire. My soul is on fire right now, because everything you just said is exactly the truth. When people like you and I, who are as connected as we are energetically, hear the truth, as you know, truth is about internal vibration and resonation. It's not about Well, it's an opinion. I always try to talk
Yeah.
to people about truth.
Oh,
And most people don't.
don't get me started on postmodern moral relativism.
I get it. Let me just comment on what you said. So you're right. Okay, it's not a matter of you're right or wrong. It's you're right. I hate saying that, but you are right. There are a very small percentage of us on this planet, unfortunately, in the current time and space, that understand what you just said are right. But I'm very glad that this is being recorded because I'm going to be blowing this out to many, many people. And I'm going to have a lot of people at very, very high levels watch this because I want to see what can happen to them if they can actually recognize truth from fiction. But you are right. This is a war. It's a holy war. Without going beyond that, it's a war for our souls. And men and women, as you said, have been violated on many fronts. And right now, the front is because they already divided the family unit. Like you told me in our text messages the other day, and Dr. Anthony Napoleon's written an amazing book about it. Please, I encourage people to read it. It's called Shadow Men. They removed women like erroneously in the postmodern feminism movement and convinced them that they had all the equal powers of men when all it was a power grab to get them into the workplace so that they can have another tax-paying citizen, so they can increase the tax slave revenue. And then obviously subsequently since then, we've had the total breakdown of the family unit. Because when a woman violates, whether it's her initiative or her non-initiative because she feels compelled to do so, her biological directive, which is to be a nurturer, to raise the children and to love the family unit, and goes out and does all the things that a man biologically is determined and driven to do, we have what we have. And now that's not even a debate anymore. Now the front is on men, as you said. And we are watching point zero, okay? Ground zero for the men is the video games. They are literally destroying young men by making them become zombies. There's 150 million men right now in North America that are considered gamers. They play 50 hours a week of video games. The majority of these men are either unemployed or underemployed. They sleep on their parents' basements or couches in their basements or their friends' basements, and they put on headcoms and they play video games all day. But that is where we're now, the front and center war, as you defined it, to divine masculinity. That is where the front has been taken to now. And all of this adds up to an amalgamation of where men and women have literally lost their role as what they're supposed to be. It's like you said, it's a destruction of the family unit. And people like you and I, in my opinion, are the light bearers, as you said, or the light workers, to bring this information to the public, to let people know that this is not some conspiracy theory. This is not, I'm wearing my tinfoil hat as a joke, but this is literally not conspiracy theory. This is observable empirical data in every element. We know sperm is being reduced physiologically and spaciously. We can go outside and we can look at men in their 20s and 30s and they look like women. They talk like women. They act like women. I mean, this is so perverse at this point. It's not even debatable. So what can you and I do? Well, clearly we can serve our mission, which is we can tell people to live a better, more optimized life, to look at getting their blood work done, to understand their internal diagnostics, okay? We're not here right now to talk about the spiritual component, but I would love to come on another podcast with you and talk about that because those are strategies that are more important than anything else because without the internal right, all the external means nothing. But right now we're fighting a war on so many fronts and we have to try to preserve, as you said, the divine femininity and the divine masculinity. And right now, currently, we're losing. There's no question. Look at the colleges, David. Look at the colleges. Look at the universities in the United States right now.
Well, that to me is that's an object lesson in the cognitive dissonance and the bankrupt nature of the current version of the left. Because the left today is nothing like the left when I was a kid. The cognitive dissonance in the left is crazy making. The fact that Antifa, the fact that Berkeley people feel okay about committing violence against people and property because someone wants to come onto the campus and share another viewpoint, and they want to do that in the name of peace and justice, how much cognitive dissonance can you possibly get? So the left has become, to me, they're self-destructing by the day and becoming irrelevant. And so that's kind of imploding on its own. So I don't worry about that too much. But one of the things that I have worried about a lot, because we need to have free speech to be able to accomplish our mission, is I've really been tuned into is what Google and Facebook and YouTube have been doing, basically censoring people.
Oh yeah. This video will be censored, David.
And affecting the algorithms, demonetizing people, and we will not be stopped. There are parallel virtual worlds that are being created as we speak where this will not happen. And either these places are going to get their act together, or again, light workers are going to be setting up parallel worlds, parallel structures where people of all viewpoints are free to speak. Because, you take away the First Amendment, you take away the Second Amendment, you don't have the United States anymore. And so,
right.
So this kind of education, like if we were to compress to a word what you're about and what I'm about, I would say what we're about is freedom. We're about people. Look at the name of the show, right? Freeing the body, freeing the soul. I mean, I could look at everything that my whole life is about, and I could look at all the activities that I'm involved in, and just about everything would fit into one of those two categories: freeing the body, freeing the soul. And so, as you know, the best jail is the one people don't know that they're in.
Exactly.
And so if I have a superpower, I would say one of my superpowers is that I've spent the last 40 years as a guide for people, helping them to wake up from the illusion, to wake up from the dream. And I've developed a lot of skills and abilities and knowledge in that area. And what I'm really excited about is to take who I am and to take who you are. And this goes back to what I was acknowledging you for in the beginning of the conversation. You have this ability to attract really good people around you that are sharp, heart-centered, have energy, and are purpose-driven. And if this show and other things that we do together, if you feel good enough about me and about the quality of these conversations to do testing and see how these other people in your world are resonating with this, if even a handful of them resonate with this and get turned on by it, to me, the potential synergy of what we could do together is just phenomenal.
I agree 100%. I mean, the only barrier right now, as I told you, and it's not me because I'm definitely a glass half full guy, is the awareness issue. And then I also, as I've told you, I believe that there is to be one more tsunami, some sort of tidal wave coming across societal means that is going to be negative, not for people like us, but I believe that the majority of people, as you phrased it perfect, that are asleep, that are, the David Hawkins 200 level of consciousness model, I think that might be a rude awakening for a lot of people. I think that, this ascension mindset or this ascension, idea of, raising people's consciousness in mass is going to be great for people that are already of a higher spiritual nature, but it's probably going to be pretty difficult for people that are of a lower spiritual nature. And as you and I know from energy work and from our knowledge and reading and everything that we've done, people evolve at their own rate and speed, and you cannot judge them.
But
so
fortunately, But fortunately, it doesn't take an arithmetic majority of people to be awake.
That's right.
There have been
Conscious raises all the boats.
There have been some very powerful studies that were done by the TM movement back in the 70s and 80s, where they took very powerful, experienced meditators and got 7,000 of them to coordinate their consciousness in a coherent brainwave space and to focus on certain things. And they had scientifically verifiable results. So my idea is that if you look at it in terms of arithmetic numbers, it'd be very easy to be resigned and get depressed. I don't get depressed because, number one, is I don't think it takes an arithmetic majority. Number two, I agree with you. It's likely that the shit will hit the fan even worse. But that is a wake-up call also. And when people are shocked into that, of course, there's an upside and a downside. There are a lot of charlatans that are going to want to play on people's fears. But on the other hand, a subset of the population that just got shocked are going to be motivated to look for workable solutions more than they have. And that's why I think we really need to use this time to get our act together, so that if there is a tsunami of interest, we need to have the consciousness and the structures and the processes set up to be able to handle and process these people, because when it comes, it could come in a wave.
Yeah, I feel like we have like 6 minutes. We should probably shut it down. By the way, this is one of my best podcasts. I am very humble and very gracious, and my heart is full of gratitude for you having me on this, because this is really good. I mean, we talked a lot about stuff. We broke a lot of ground here in the end. We're very, very open and candid and transparent and clearly authentic. There is going to be a tsunami, as you said, okay? But you can't sit around, worry about what's to come. You have to get your heart right. You have to get your soul right. If you don't know what that means, reach out to either of us, back channel, and ask us how to do that, because obviously that's all we do every single day. But David, I would be humbled and honored to, explore further synergies and partnerships with you. I definitely want to connect you with some of the people that I work with, who are very involved at a much higher level than I am, that I'm, lucky to mentor with and connect, because I feel like your story and your knowledge and how open you are, because there aren't a lot of people that are open like you are, to be, also as learned, have a background and to come off as authentic as you do. You don't come off as woo-woo at all. And clearly, I don't either, but and we don't give a shit. But the reality is that I feel like your message needs to get out to some more people. So I'm definitely going to connect you with somebody. When we stop this podcast, I'm going to connect you with this person right away. Because he's a big name and he's very, very big into what you and I are doing. But I'm at a loss for words. I think this has been absolutely epic. I think we've reached an apex here. And obviously I'm not as familiar with your podcast. So if this is what you do on all your podcasts, man, hats off to you. Cause I don't talk to a lot of people who are as brave as you are. But I feel, like I said, my chakras are on fire right now. I feel alive. You brought the best.
I don't know if it's because I'm 62 or I'm an old soul, but I'm at a point in my life now where there are very few things that I know what my mission is. Let's put it like that. And I'm a very mission-driven person, and I'm at a point in my life where if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Exactly.
I'm very discerning in where I'm focusing my energies, and I do want to make a book recommendation for people that maybe are not as steeped in this worldview as you and I are, but they're interested in getting their feet wet. There's a really great book that right now is on sale for 99 cents on Kindle that is incredibly well done. And it doesn't blow people away, but it gives people a great overview. It's a book called Reality Unveiled. Reality Unveiled. And you can get the Kindle version now. I think it's on sale for 99 cents. And for an extra $1.99, you can add the audio version. And I spoke with the author because I was so impressed with what he accomplished. And he encouraged me to share this far and wide. And if for some reason there's somebody listening from a very poor country or something, and you can't afford the 99 cents, let me know, because he gave me permission in those kinds of situations to share a PDF version. So there's no financial blockage to getting that out there. And for anybody that's considering wanting to introduce people to what's beyond the matrix in a very clear way that isn't wooey-wooey at all, that won't blow people out of the water, but will give people a really good introduction, I want to highly recommend this book, Reality Unveiled.
David, I don't even know. I've just looked them up on Amazon, but please send me the PDF because I don't use Kindle. I read paperbacks only. I refuse. So send me the PDF. I'll read it tonight.
Okay.
I just
yeah.
My
and then, so, you know, from time to time, I don't know if this is the way it is for you, but from time to time, I meet somebody, and it's like a date with destiny. It's like the whole thing was being set up on unseen levels, and then my conscious mind is the last to get with the program. And that's the way I feel about you and me. I feel like we're here to do something big. And the more we get to know each other, the more we'll discover what that is. And I think some of it has to do with you and me, and maybe some of it has to do with bringing your wife into the picture and
Sure.
and really empowering women. You know, I've spent the bulk of my last 40 years empowering women.
Awesome.
About 80% of my practice has been women. And it's just been in the last year or two that I've had the feeling that there's a critical mass now of honoring the divine feminine to the point where it's the time now to focus on empowering the divine masculine.
Correct. I agree 100%.
So I'm really excited about that. And so let's close off by giving out your contact info.
Yeah, for sure. So guys, again, I think we've really set and broke a lot of ground here in this podcast. So humbled, honored, privileged to be here with David and obviously with you guys when you guys watch this. As I always say when I do my podcast, please share this with as many people as possible because this information is literally critical in expanding the consciousness of this planet, and not just this planet, but its many, many denizens that are here and there. You can reach me the easiest way. I'm all over the internet. I do a lot of different things. My website, my primary website is TOT. So it's Testosterone Optimization Therapy Revolution.com. It's a big site. There's tons of information on optimization, on health, on nutrition, on fitness, on weight training, on cardiovascular training. I mean, it's really an authoritative site. I have many writers that write for it. I'm also very active on Twitter. My Twitter handle is TRT Expert. If you send me a message on Twitter, I will definitely respond to you. I have a lot of messages, so just be patient. I'll get to you within 24 hours. And then you can reach me by email. Now, listen, I have 3 best-selling books on Amazon. They're all very, very great, very well researched. If you email me at jay@trtrevolution.com, I will be happy to send all 3 of them to you for free via the PDF. We do make both of the first 2 paperback versions available for free. You just have to pay shipping. It's totrevolution.com/book. And then the second one is my book on intermittent fasting, which is actually the #1 selling intermittent fasting book on Amazon right now. It's metabolicblowtorchdiet.com. That will also send the paperback out to you for free. So I know a lot of people don't like to read PDFs, so we make the option to get the paperback for free so you can highlight them. But again, like I said, David, it's been a very, very humbly honored to be here today, and very thankful for you to be given this opportunity to be here and position my message. And just like you, I share my mission wherever I go. The mission is always take precedence over everything else.
Well, God bless you and God bless your family. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching or listening to another edition of Freeing the Body, Freeing the Soul. I'm your host, Dr. David, the Cutting Edge Doc, and here on Freeing the Body, Freeing the Soul, we do in-depth interviews with individuals that are doing cutting-edge work in the areas of healing, spirituality, and social transformation. My very special guest today has been Campbell, who he and I are rapidly becoming good friends, and I really stay tuned because I know there's going to be more of these down the road. So I appreciate you. Without you, these wouldn't happen. So I really appreciate you. And with that, we'll close with love and peace. Bye for now.